The first thing you should probably know about Atomic Blonde going in is that the title is just a little bit deviously misleading, in the way that quick, cheap, violent B-movies like this one aspires to tend to be. Based on a moderately obscure graphic novel called The Coldest City, the movie version's title and marketing focus on brutal, elaborately choreographed action scenes featuring Charlize Theron as the nicknamed title character, clearly intended to evoke the idea that this is an R-rated, uncostumed superhero movie mainly about a one-woman army dispatching waves and waves of henchmen in violent fashion. A female John Wick, basically. But while Theron ably affirms that her late career loop around back into action heroine territory was indeed a wise decision and continues to be, the actual film has a lot more going on than the action heroine-focused ad campaign would have you believe. That's not to say it's better than the slinky, sexy killing spree the trailers have been selling, just that it's a different animal. Though if you indeed did show up strictly to see one of Hollywood's most glamorous beauties tear through bad guys while looking fabulous and hooking up with another of Hollywood's most glamorous beauties, you are definitely getting that. You're just also getting a decent, if decidedly conventional, John le Carre-style Cold War espionage movie along with it. Matters of expectation aside, it's Berlin, 1989, the wall is about to come down and Soviet communism is staggering around only just now realizing it's been dead on its feet for a while, but there's still at least one last East German defector with a handful of vital information whose escape to the West needs to be managed in a hurry. And since at least one agent has already been put on ice, MI6 dispatches Theron's hot-edge problem solver to slip in, work the ground, and possibly get James McAvoy's gone native deep cover operative back on track. But she instead discovers that the Berlin situation has spiraled out of control, multiple competing parties are after the same information, nobody is who they say they are and can't be trusted even if they were, and look, if you've seen one other spy movie like this, you already know the drill. But the fact that you're expected to know the drill is part of the problem. There's a lot of Cold War skullduggery misdirection front-loaded into this to keep you from focusing on the somewhat obvious answers to what are meant to be the big central twists of the main plot, so the first act you've kinda gotta slog through some pretty tedious scenes of procedural spycraft, espionage jargon, and too clever by half scenes of people having conversations where both of them are lying, and both know they're lying and are just trying to suss out what the other's lying about. That's just not as pretend interesting as it needs to be, even as director David Leitch, yes, one of the John Wick guys, piles on the era-appropriate high-fashion, pink, purple, green neon lighting and new wave needle drops to ensure that it all feels like being submerged in a hazy bath of late 80s Euro kitsch. Not bad by any means, just, well, you can only coast so far on sex and style alone. Fortunately, we get sex and style and substance once Sofia Boutella shows up as Theron's French spy contract / love interest. Between this and Kingsman, Boutella really does seem to be ideally suited to playing the revisionist variations on Bond girl archetypes, and she has killer chemistry with Theron, which is important because the relative tenderness of their romantic scenes are meant to be the crucial one real thing human component that keeps us invested and humanizes the otherwise Terminator-like protagonist. And seeing a matter-of-fact female-female romance play out as no big deal component of a mainstream action flick is actually one of the more impressively novel elements of the film. Now, it would have surely been more impressive if it ultimately didn't play out in disappointingly tropey fashion otherwise, but two steps forward, I guess. But the star here is Charlize Theron, and specifically her prowess in the action scenes, and the film really delivers on both counts. Elevating thin material without drowning in all the stylistic flourishes is the mark of a genuine movie star, and her three big fight scenes are all among the best you'll see this year, especially the big one towards the end, a long-take room-to-room brawl that matches the kitchen sink choreography of the Raid movies, with more realistic physicality that leaves everyone looking as bloody, broken, worn out, sloppy, and barely standing as you'd have to imagine such a pounding leaves you in reality. If real people could survive any of this in the first place. Seriously, this one is going to be the new go-to industry reference point for this kind of fight scene for years to come. Speaking of the violence, it's also refreshing, if of course viscerally disturbing, that they don't indulge in the cliche of action heroines magically recovering from all the battle blemishes in between scenes. Theron takes a lot of punishment amidst meting it out on her own, and she wears every scar, bruise, black eye, and split lip from scene to scene throughout the film. And at first, it's genuinely jarring to see all that combat damage showing through her fancy outfits and slinky lingerie later on, since decades of cheesy movies have conditioned audiences to only ever read such imagery as visual shortcuts for pity or pathos rather than consummate badass who just want to fight. So, all said and done, Atomic Blonde is just a few meters of depth shy of genuine greatness, but it kicks serious ass, it's never a chore to watch even during the less exciting parts, and it's easily more of a visceral, straight-to-the-nerves action vehicle, to say nothing of a hell of a lot sexier, than the last couple James Bond movies. Maybe if it's a hit, they'll do another one and mix in the missing layers of actual intrigue, but for now, this is easily the most satisfying action experience to land since, well, Jet Sense Wonder Woman, come to think of it. 3 stars, not much to it, but what's there is good stuff.